看一下，看。你是不是刘兆华？啊？
认识了，这还用？
Cooking 10 tons of ice, which is worth $5 billion per day. A chemistry genius who showed his talent just in middle school. How did he go from a soldier to a bailiff, and then from a stand-up businessman to a super-century drug lord? How did he create a brand new manufacturing method of methamphetamine that led the international standards as a high school dropout? And from being an entrepreneur who lectured to college students to becoming a death row inmate? Today's story is about a super drug lord from China, Lau Zhaohua. We'll refer to him as Lau below. Trust me, his life is way more legendary than you've seen on Breaking Bad. The amount of meth cooked up by Walter White in the show is just small potatoes compared to what Lau is pushing. The sheer volume of drugs he produced even left narcotics squad shocked, as they'd never seen such an enormous amount of drugs in their lives.
打开看，全部是冰毒，搬出来在操场上啊，一个操场12吨多。
With just a middle school education and diploma, he was behind the biggest drug case, got a world record back then, outsmarting the cops at every turn. Yet, the reason he got caught was because he wanted to pay his last respects at his father's grave before fleeing the country. What made his life story a legend? And what really happened back then? Without further ado, let's go back to 1999 and take a closer look at the details of Lau's life story together. In November 1999, Chinese police received a crucial tip-off. Over 108 kilograms of drugs had entered Guangdong province from abroad. Authorities kept a close eye on the truck's movements. When the drugs arrived in a warehouse in Guangzhou, the prepared drug enforcement officers pounced, busting the gang. However, those captured were just underlings. The main drug traffickers were not among them. While seizing heroin, officers also noticed another suspicious big warehouse. When they opened it up, everyone present was astounded to find 11.08 tons of meth, neatly packed in 554 boxes, each containing 20 kilograms of the drug with a purity of up to 99%. Just like Jesse Pinkman said,
"This is pure glass. You're a goddamn artist."
The hundreds of boxes filled an entire basketball court. What did 11 tons of meth mean? It was twice the total amount of meth seized worldwide that year, excluding China. If sold, these drugs would have been worth $5.5 billion at that time.
意味着在当年的那个行情呢，可以卖55亿美元，意味着可以毒害世界上很多的人。
But what was even more shocking was that this was just 1/3 of the total products of the drug factory. Another 19 tons had already been sold to Japan, the United States, the Philippines, and Hong Kong, with about 10 tons going to Japan, over 6 tons to the US, and over 2 tons to the Philippines and Hong Kong. Meth, colloquially called ice, and scientifically known as methamphetamine, causes intense toxic reactions in users, leading to extreme excitement, even hallucinations. Methamphetamine was first synthesized by the Japanese chemist A. Ogata or Akira Ogata in 1917 or 1919. Initially, it was used as a diet drug and to treat rhinitis. It was also utilized by the Japanese pilots during World War II, who flew suicide missions under the influence of it. After the war, this military drug gradually went viral into civilian life and spread overseas. Long-term abuse can lead to addiction, and an overdose can be fatal. At the time, the police identified the methamphetamine as being made with a new, unknown drug-making technique. The high purity and potency of the drug immediately led the police to link it to a previous case they were dealing with. The only person capable of synthesizing methamphetamine with such brand new technology in the world was the man who would later be known as China's century drug lord. The case was deemed a top priority, and a wanted notice was issued for him. But it wasn't until 6 years later that this drug kingpin was finally captured. Capturing Lau was a heart-stopping chase. In fact, it was the 4th time the police had attempted to apprehend him. Lau had been on the run for a full 8 years, with rumors about him swirling in society and never ceasing. Lau's life trajectory was also full of twists and turns, to the point where his psyche gradually became distorted. A former border defense soldier and a bailiff, he transformed into a big drug lord, and with his exceptional counter-surveillance skills, he had been playing cat and mouse with the police for years. This became an indelible battle of good versus evil in the history of China's drug prohibition. After his capture, Lau was extremely arrogant and defiant, trying to justify his crimes.
人家成功用鸦片开始打开中国的大门，我也应该可以用冰毒打开他们的大门。我没有想到我自己下场，但是每个人都会对自己的事情负责。
On March 5th, 1965, Lau Zhaohua was born into a poor family in Saiki Town, Fuan County, Fujian Province, China. As the youngest of 5 siblings, his family's financial struggles were exacerbated by the number of 5 children. They relied on his father's tofu business to make ends meet. Tragedy struck early. His father passed away when Lau was just 12, and his mother was left paralyzed on bed. His elder siblings took on the responsibility of caring for the family. Despite the poverty, Lau was not a reclusive child. According to his second sister, Lau was always clever and helped with household chores to ease the family's burdens. Neighbors remember him as an ordinary child just like others, but with a bright mind and excellent academic performance, especially in chemistry, where he showed a keen interest and extraordinary talent. They didn't butter him up. He won the second place in a provincial chemistry competition for middle school students. However, due to the family's dire financial situation, Lau couldn't afford the tuition and living expenses and had to drop out of high school in his sophomore year at the age of 16. He quickly learned that life was really tough without money. After leaving school, he tried to learn car repair from his eldest brother, but his brother's temper was too much to bear, so he left to join the army. Since he was too young for the recruitment age, Lau lied about his age, adding 1 year to his age to enlist. He became a soldier in the Fuzhou Border Defense Brigade. In the army, Lau showed his shrewd side, and his proactive attitude with competence earned him recognition from his superiors. 2 years later, he was given the opportunity to study at the Fuzhou Armed Police School. After graduating, he was promoted to the platoon leadership and served as the agent of mess officer, becoming the first and only one from his batch to be promoted. During his military service, he also met a girlfriend, Wu Yunxing, who was studying at Fujian Normal University, and they planned to marry 2 years later. She later became his first wife. If Lau had continued to excel, his future would have been promising. But in his eyes, he had no interest in a career as a civil servant. Only material affluence could satisfy him. The poverty of his family of origin was deeply ingrained in his bones, and his desire for money was insatiable. As long as it could make money, morality and the law were just trivial matters. Thus, he stepped onto another path that seemed to be full of glory for his life. In January 1988, while serving as the agent of mess officer, Lau was found to have embezzled public funds, totaling 145.15 yuan. At the time, this amount was not a small amount but not considered extremely severe. As a result, he received an administrative demerit and a serious warning within the group. This blemish abruptly ended Lau's military career. However, in reality, this was a meticulously planned move by the 23-year-old Lau. He had been wanting to leave the military early, but the regulations required a 15-year service, and he had already served for 7 years. Feeling constrained in the barracks and eager to try his hand in the outside world, he decided on an extreme method to end his military life. As the agent of mess officer, he deliberately exposed his embezzlement during the accounting process, ensuring it was easily found by the auditors. The amount of 145 yuan was carefully chosen to warrant punishment, but not too severe. As expected, after the incident was exposed, he was able to transition to civilian life, just as he had hoped. He was assigned to a court in his hometown of Fuan County, becoming a bailiff in the courthouse. Within 2 years, due to his exceptional interpersonal skills, Lau was drafted by the local government to be in charge of investment attraction. During those years, his work performance was outstanding, and he received multiple commendations from his leaders. Lau Zhaohua, through work, met a businessman from Taiwan and established a good relationship with him in private. Soon after, the businessman noticed that Lau was not willing to be a nobody. He was ambitious and intelligent. The businessman decided to take this young man under his wing to get rich together. One day, the businessman mysteriously took out a tin box containing 100 grams of ephedrine and told Lau that it was an ingredient for making ice, hinting at the huge business opportunity behind it. He then directed Lau to buy a book that contained information on making ice, hoping that Lau would synthesize the 100 grams of ephedrine into ice. In the Xinhua bookstore in the city, Lau indeed found the book he needed. He also casually bought a very common high school-level book, the Organic Chemistry, along with other chemical configurations and laboratory vessels, and dived into cooking with these two recipe books. A few days later, in a hotel room, Lau successfully synthesized methamphetamine, which is ice. Lau's talent in chemistry allowed him to successfully complete this work. After this, he gave all his products to the Taiwanese businessman. Later, Lau Zhaohua, as the person in charge of attracting investment, had more and more power, which attracted many businessmen to cozy up to him. Some Taiwanese businessmen naturally tried to win him over in order to get more preferential policies. Partnering with him to smuggle and taking him to make money was definitely the best choice. In 1992, Lau jointly established a company with a Taiwanese businessman in his hometown, Fujian Hongfa Plastic Company, Limited. By this way, Lau stepped onto his entrepreneurial journey. They used the company's name to ostensibly purchase and process foreign waste plastics, but secretly smuggled cars, electrical appliances, and other items. He soon made his first million. Lau also resigned from his job at the court, which paid about 50 yuan per month only. He settled down in a 3-levels villa near from their factory, which he bought for 700,000 yuan, was considered to be the top luxury in Fuan at that time. In addition, he soon had cars, such as the Crown 3.0. He got 3 of it. In just 3 years, he turned himself from a bailiff to a local big shot, during which he also married his girlfriend, the college student, and she gave the birth to his son. But the good times didn't last long. He suffered from the first setback in his life. China increased the crackdown on smuggling, including strictly controlled the import of plastics from abroad, resulting in heavy losses for his plastic processing plant. A sharp decline in income causing the cooperation between the two men ended up here. Lau, who wanted to save his business, racking his brains, thinking of various ways to make money faithfully, until someone asked him whether he could get drugs, saying that he was ready to smuggle them to overseas market. Lau only then specifically noticed that the profits of dealing drugs could reach an astonishing 3,000%, which made him no longer calm down. He was awake. Driven by the interests, he prepared to cook ice again. Ephedrine must be needed for making ice, but China is one of the countries those control ephedrine most strictly around the world. So he had to look for other ways, and in order to find a way, he bought various books about chemistry. He spent almost a year for learning and experimenting, and finally succeeded in inventing a technology to replace ephedrine with other chemicals. And the cost of this technology is way lower than before. Raw materials can be purchased at will, but there are also cons. That is the last link. Crystallization. The finished product is cloudy and yellowish. It looks very inferior. As a slogan of grasp technology, make excellence, Lau strives for perfection. He remembered the time of attracting investment, met a retired professor of a university in Xi'an. So he went to Xi'an to take the semi-finished product, pretending that he wanted to produce healthcare product, onion essence, and asked the professor how to crystallize it. Since there was no such technology and released product on the market at that time, the professor could not know that this product would eventually become methamphetamine, so the professor personally gave him some guidance in his laboratory, pointed out some mistakes in his crystallization. Paying 5,000 yuan to the professor as the tuition, and taking the professor's instruction, Lau returned to Fujian province to continue his research. Just a month later, he actually put a series of difficult techniques to experiment successfully. This achievement also laid the technical foundation for the later production line of 1 ton per day, and thus Lau began to go astray, straightly to the end. In May 1996, Lau produced 30 kilograms of meth and found drug traffickers Chen Wenin and Zhang Minghui to sell it for him. Both of them lived by trafficking drugs and were known to be sneaky and underhanded. Lau repeatedly emphasized that there wasn't even any circumstances to deal the drug on the mainland China to them. However, for convenience, they directly sold it on the mainland, like what we call the noob teammates. Their first customer was an undercover cop. In August 1996, near the hustling and bustling exhibition center in Fuzhou, they were caught on the spot with 5 kilograms of drugs ready for the deal. Despite being arrested, the two men were very arrogant during the interrogation and the trial, refusing to disclose the source. As a result, they were sentenced to death in the first trial. At the corner of the court's audience area during the first trial, there was a person quietly following the whole process. This person was the drug supplier in the case, Lau. Because he personally came to the scene, he made a new judgment about what would happen next. He realized that Chen and Zhang, in order to protect themselves, would definitely give him up. In fact, he was right. After the first trial, the two men, out of fear of the death penalty, reported Lau immediately. Thanks to their report, they were kept alive and sentenced to a life imprisonment in the second trial. Lau Zhaohua, who used to be a bailiff, took advantage of his identity and warned Chen and Zhang, saying that if they were caught, they should not say anything and keep their mouths shut. Lau claimed he had a way to get them out. They believed this lie and refused to confess at first, resulting in the death penalty. The result of the death penalty made them suddenly wake up. They felt that Lau was just talking nonsense and they might have been deceived. They could no longer stand it. The police heard the name Lau Zhaohua for the first time and immediately went to Fujian Hongfa Plastic Company to arrest him after getting the clue. However, Lau, who had a premonition, had already fled. The police searched his factory and villa and found a secret passage under the first floor of the villa, which led to the Sai River 150 meters away. There was always a single-person speedboat parked by the river all year round. Lau could escape quickly by the secret passage to the speedboat in less than 5 minutes, while the police needed to bumpy 40 minutes to arrive from the entrance of the village. Moreover, the whole picture of entering the village would be seen by Lau. After enjoying a 5 years life of wealth, Lau ran away directly, leaving behind his first wife and child. In the two factories next to the villa, there were many drug-making equipments. Due to the rush to escape, there was no time to destroy them. There were a large number of devices for producing and storing drugs here. The police found that the production of meth here did not require ephedrine, but was a new type of methamphetamine manufacturing technology synthesized by new materials, which shocked everyone. In 1997, the Fujian Provincial Public Security Department issued a wanted notice for Lau Zhaohua. The notice was stuck all over the streets and alleys of Fuan City, but for 2 years, Lau seemed to have vanished into thin air, with no clues at all. After the case broke out, Lau took 200,000 yuan in cash and went to the Snowy Mountain Temple in Minho County, which is only 70 kilometers away from Fuzhou. He stayed there for 5 days, burning incense and praying, thinking about life. He decided to make a change. It was not to confess for his crimes, but to ponder why he was exposed. After self-diagnosis, he concluded that the failure was in the sales link of the drugs, regretting having chosen unreliable people like Chen and Zhang. If he could find someone with a mature drug trafficking network to cooperate with, such as Gus Fring, a strong alliance would surely take off his business. He made new plans for the future. The moment he left Snowy Mountain Temple, he also truly took the first step towards the depth. After leaving Snowy Mountain Temple, he found the situation outside severe, so he set off for Sanya, Hainan, where he hid for a year. During this time, he met a girl again and they quickly cohabited. The girl was pregnant with Lau's child. When Lau spent all the 200,000 yuan he brought out, the predicament of life made him decide to stage a comeback. He immediately sent her girlfriend to return to her hometown in Hunan to give birth to the child, and he went to Puning, Guangdong. This time, he felt the heat had passed, and it was time to find reliable partners. Soon, Lau found out that the local drug lord was Chen Bingxi, we'll refer to him as Chen below, who controlled the drug sales network throughout Southeast Asia. The fixed supplier was the big drug lord Tan Xiaolin in Myanmar. It was very difficult for the obscure Lau to break into this circle. However, at that time, Chen Bingxi was troubled by one thing: the global strict control of the sale and use of ephedrine. Without ephedrine, ice could not be produced. When Chen was worried about the source of goods, a subordinate recommended Lau to him, just arrived in Puning from Sanya. Lau said that his own synthetic technology did not need ephedrine. After understanding his background, Chen determined that this person could be well utilized, so he decided to invest 3.7 million yuan and provide a venue. Lau invested with his technology, and the profits of the produced ice were split in half. In just a few months, they produced a ton of meth, but this amount was far from satisfying Lau's ambition. Although a year ago, he was still a small player producing only 30 kilograms, his ultimate goal was to build a giant factory that could produce 10 tons of methamphetamine per day and become a world-class drug lord, to be international. Soon, this ton of ice was smoothly sold overseas through Chen's marketing channels, and Lau obtained the first large amount of filthy lucre. With this money, Lau Zhaohua continued to purchase raw materials and expand the production line. Once, Lau saw an English-language journal called the Journal of Organic Chemistry, which introduced Heroin 07. At that time, this was the most high-end existence on the market. Out of curiosity, Lau wanted to research it, so he went to a university library to find some information and quickly cracked it, successfully synthesizing it. Identified by instruments, it was completely in line with the American standards. As a result, in just over 2 years, Lau Zhaohua crazily manufactured more than 30 tons of this new type of meth. After Chen smoothly dealt it, he gave Lau about 26 million yuan, equivalent to around 3.7 million US dollars in cash. Gosh, 3.7 million in 90s, plus 2 Hong Kong bank accounts and passwords, with hundreds of millions of funds in the accounts. The account name and password code were a molecular formula, but the secret of it was only understandable to both of them. In addition to money, Lau was way more satisfied with his technology and equipment. He showed off to others that he would not sell it for even 3 billion US dollars. However, an accident occurred in the production process because the operation was careless, leading to the leakage of chemical raw materials. As a result, a large number of fish in the pond next to the factory were poisoned to death. The angry fishermen reported it immediately. In order to avoid attention of police, Lau and Chen decided to leave the place. At that time, China proposed the Western Development Strategy. At the end of August 1998, Lau, by the name of Guangdong Feitian Company, set up a new factory in Yinchuan, Ningxia, and started production, producing 31 tons of ice here. The drugs were transported to the warehouse in Puning by planes and trunks in batches and handed over to Chen for sale. In Lau's words, he wanted his ice to occupy the whole world. On November 4th, 1999, more than 100 kilograms of heroin purchased by Chen from Tand entered China and was transported to the warehouse in Guangdong. This batch had been watched by the police for a long time. The prepared drug enforcement officers rushed up and arrested Chen and his followers. At the same time, another warehouse was also very suspicious. When they pried open the warehouse, all the people were shocked. That was the shocking scene at the beginning of this video, with more than 500 boxes covering the entire basketball court appeared. These were all transported from the factory in Ningxia. After the police identified the drug lord behind the scenes as Lau Zhaohua, they also found his office address, which was in room 818 of the Guangdong President Hotel. They immediately sent undercover police to the hotel for verification. Just as the police were deploying the operation, Chen got the news first and called Lau out, deceiving him that the problem with the goods problem occurred during transportation. Because he didn't want him to know that it was his mistake that implicated Lau, Chen hoped that Lau would escape abroad with him. With the abilities of the two talents, they could live well anywhere, but Lau refused to escape abroad, and they parted their ways. Lau aimed to take more cash for his escape, planned to return to the President Hotel to collect cash. However, as he entered the elevator, he noticed others pressing the button for the 8th floor. With his strong counter-surveillance instincts, Lau suspected these people were undercover police officers coming to arrest him. He calmly pressed the button for the 7th floor instead. After exiting the elevator on the 7th floor, he walked to the 8th floor to observe. His suspicions were confirmed, and he swiftly walked out the building via the fire escape. On that day, to prevent Lau's escape, the police mobilized a large force, imposing a strict cordon on all entry and exit points of the city and major traffic arteries, scrutinizing every suspicious vehicle leaving Guangzhou. It was as if the entire city of Guangzhou was encircled by police. Anticipating the police's roadblocks and checks, Lau realized that public transport or driving would be too risky. He simply purchased a bicycle near the President Hotel and casually rode through the city of Guangzhou, passing through checkpoints multiple times. It took him about 3 hours to cycle out of the city, where he hired a car to go to Shantao, then headed straight to Xiamen and finally transferred to Wui Mountain, where his third wife, Li Shaoqing, lived. Later, Lau discovered that the reason his operations were exposed was not due to a problem with his meth transportation, but because the transactions of Chun and Tand implicated him. He was angry. He evaded capture as police in Guangdong and Fujian used various methods to arrest him, but for several months, they had no success. Rumors about Lau Zhaohua spread, with some saying he had fled the country, while others suggested he had undergone plastic surgery. At that time, Lau took more than 5 million yuan in cash, went to Tsingtao with his wife to keep a low key and engage in other businesses. With the lottery being a booming industry in China, he decided to invest in it. He contracted 10 China's welfare lottery machines and couldn't resist trying his luck. A few months later, he unexpectedly won the first prize, with over 1 million yuan. Shandong Province TV even interviewed Lau on this occasion. He proactively contacted Ocean University of China, supporting a research project on the extraction of medicinal substances from marine life with 400,000 yuan, and even lectured to college students. Feeling confident again, Lau believed that winning the lottery signified that his fortunes were on the rise, and it was time to stage a comeback. During the Western Development Campaign, Lau headed to the west of China, with Guilin, Guangxi, as his destination. He believed Guilin, Guilin, was his lucky place because the name contained 3 Mu characters. Let me explain a little bit of it. In Chinese 5 elements, gold, wood, water, fire, earth, he had consulted a master who said his life lacked Mu, which means he was lack of wood or tree. This is why all his fake names contained many characters for Mu, as supplements to his life, such as Lao Sun, Livo Sun, Lao Linbin, Livo Linbin, Chen Guisun, Chen Guisun, and Lao Linyang, Livo Linyang. In 2000, Lau settled in Guilin, Chuanzhou County, under the name Li Xinqing, transforming into a well-funded entrepreneur eager to invest in the West and in Guilin. He quickly integrated with local government officials as an investor and established a company called Guilin, Sunsun Biotech Company Limited, with many Mu characters in its name. By the way, the character Sun means forest. He signed a contract with the Lingui means close to Guilin, county government for an investment of 300 million yuan, leasing about 1,600 hectares of forest land to plant Chinese yew trees, which is a sort of precious tree, although the land was unsuitable for this purpose. Lau started by cultivating seedlings on the land, none of which survived, but this did not affect his bold business operations over the years. In 2003, the Guilin Evening News reported on a middle-aged man who bravely fought off thieves in his home, capturing 3 of them. This man was Lau, undercover by the name Li Xinqing. He claimed to be a 36-year-old retired soldier with years of Sanda, Chinese martial arts, showing disdain for petty thieves. He gained some local fame, and it seemed that Lau, who had seemingly returned to a normal life, had reformed. However, in reality, the Ice King of drug manufacturing never gave up on his drug-making plans. Although himself did not take drugs and had no addiction, his fanaticism for drug production and trafficking, and the satisfaction brought by huge profits, were way more addictive to him. In the second half of 2003, Lau discovered a huge natural cave in the countryside of Lingui County. He lied to the county officials, claiming to invest 130 million yuan to set up an onion crystal factory in the cave for healthcare product research and development. Soon, he became a guest of honor among local officials and was considered a role model and leader among local entrepreneurs. However, this was actually another well-prepared drug-making base. Over a year, Lau secretly transported drug-making equipments, preparing to resume his old business. Meanwhile, his previous partner, Chun, who had fled abroad, was arrested in Vietnam. Subsequently, under his statement, Lau's criminal facts were completely exposed. On November 24, 2004, the Ministry of Public Security of China held a press conference and issued an A-level wanted notice, offering a reward of 380,000 yuan for the capture of Lau, who was the highest rewarded drug lord at the time. The wanted notice was then broadcast on various media, and for a time, he became the #1 fugitive of concern to people all over China.
今天向全国发布通缉令，公开通缉5名贩毒数量巨大、危害特别严重的在逃毒品犯罪嫌疑人。
一看电视，哎，总在那个新闻频道啊，怎么有我的通缉令呢？我还在想，哎，厉害啊！
At the moment when the wanted notice was broadcast on TV, Lau was having dinner with several business friends in Guilin. When Lau saw his photo appear on the TV news, he calmly asked the people around him, "You think the guy on TV looked like me?" His friend replied, "How could it be you?" He acted very calmly, and everyone took it as a joke and did not suspect. After dinner, he realized that he had to escape as soon as possible because he was too high profile and there were too many people here who knew him. He didn't even dare to go home after dinner and drove away directly. As he expected, after the wanted notice was broadcast on TV, the Guilin police immediately received a series of report calls to dob him in, and the police immediately deployed a capture operation. When they arrived at Lau's villa, it was already empty. Lau parked his car at the train station, trying to create an illusion for the police that he had run away by train. In fact, he didn't leave Guilin at all, but hid on the spot, hiding in an abandoned radar cave in Yenshan, Guilin. Lau, with a subordinate, hid in the cave for half a month, and the two survived on ham sausages and instant noodles. When the police's search covered this cave, they were empty-handed again, only seeing the provocative traces left by Lau for the police. He wrote at the entrance of the cave, "Li Xinqing has been traveling here," and there were 3 big characters in the cave, his real name, Lau Zhaohua. After hiding in the radar cave for half a month, he fled to Guangzhou with only 100 yuan left. He got no choice but to pawn the Rolex watch which he bought for 180,000 yuan for 20,000 yuan. He was going to smuggle to the Philippines and flee abroad. He always thought that the most dangerous place was the safest, and before leaving, he had to do one last thing. He went back to his hometown of Fuan to take a last respect at his father's grave. But this time, he met misfortune. The wanted notices everywhere made him dare not even step out of the rental house. Although the police could not find his trace, they had already monitored his relatives and friends closely. On a few days before the Lunar Spring Festival in 2005, the police found that Lau's wife, Li Xiaoqing, rented a house in a populated area of Fuan, which was prepared for Lau. They didn't scare them off until the Lunar Spring Festival. The familiar face they were looking for appeared nearby. According to the long-term secret investigation, the Fujian police clarified the clues, confirmed he was Lau, and formulated a capture operation called Woodpecker. Do you still remember what Lau was lack of in his life that I just mentioned? On March 5th, 2005, at 0:30 a.m., a joint operation was conducted by the Fujian Provincial Anti-Drug Squad, the Criminal Investigation Brigade, and the Armed Police, consisting of 58 Special Operations Forces with sniper rifles and infrared sights, among other special equipment. They surrounded the rental house where Lau was hiding, catching him asleep at 4:10 when the command post issued the arrest order. Yet, Lau wasn't panicked, even joked to the petrified Li Hua beside him, "They've come to arrest us." Coincidentally, this day happened to be Lau's 40th birthday, and he claimed that everything was predestined. After 8 years on the run, fabricating identities and lies, and taunting the police, the century's drug lord, Lau Zhaohua, was finally captured.
你们想知道什么事情，你列一个清单，清单。或者来讲呢，你做一个提纲。你如果想了以自费，那没劲。我知道，我跟你讲，你根本这个要从我这里，你讲白。我也是挺同意单位的事情。在这一天呢，我希望我们如果谈判坦诚一点，这个没问题。
As we see in the footage, his attitude didn't waver until the trial. On June 26, 2006, the Guangzhou Intermediate People's Court held a public trial for Lau Zhaohua's case. He persistently argued that what he produced was levorotatory and dextrorotatory methamphetamine hydrochloride, isomers of methamphetamine, not the same substance, but a chemical intermediate. At that time, the law indeed did not prohibit the manufacture of these substances, and they were not listed in the criminal law's directory of drugs. So, Lau proclaimed his innocence and demanded to be acquitted.
冰毒呢，在常温下，前碱性，不容易吸收。假如我生产的东西呢是盐酸左绳甲基苯丙胺或盐酸右绳甲基苯丙胺，分子结构跟甲基苯丙胺分子完全不同。96年的时候，我看过存货人大常委委员会关于禁毒的决定，这里面呢就没有把那个盐酸左绳甲基苯丙胺跟盐酸右绳甲基苯丙胺列为毒品，所以我认为呢，我这个东西不是毒品，因为它没有列入。那么还可以继续生产是吧？对。
The court found some merit in his argument, acknowledging a loophole in the law. On June 22, 2007, Lau Zhaohua was sentenced to death for manufacturing, transporting, and trafficking drugs, deprivation of political rights for life, and confiscation of all personal property. China also began to amend relevant laws. Lau Zhaohua appealed the ruling, but in 2008, the Guangdong Provincial High Court dismissed the appeal and upheld the original judgment. On September 15, 2009, with the approval of the Supreme People's Court of China, 44-year-old Lau Zhaohua was executed by lethal injection. During the capture of this century's drug lord, main criminals such as Chen Bingxi and the northern Myanmar drug lord Tan Xiaolin were all captured and ultimately sentenced to death. An era of ice would come to an end with their death, at least in China. Lau Zhaohua, the first person on mainland China to use a new process to synthesize high-purity methamphetamine, was a chemistry genius who went astray in the eyes of the police, one of the most legendary figures in the drug world, a good student in the eyes of his family, a master of time management in the eyes of his 3 ex-wives, and a bad father to his 4 children. Regardless of who he was, his history of crime and escape confirmed that the end of drugs is the point with no return. A drug lord's story is a best testament to 10 years of sinful drug making and 10 years of fearful escape. Although sanctioned, Lau may not be the last drug lord. However, the end for a drug lord can only be a dark end. Those who become powerful through drugs will eventually be swallowed by a black hole. There are many choices and options in our lives, and we are going to try a lot of things for the first time, but absolutely not drugs. Hoping those who are suffering from drugs could come out of it. Behind this superficial excitement and novel experience is actually an abyss. The instruction of drugs has only 4 big words: ruining families and lives. There are people risking their lives to protect us away from drugs. To refuse drugs is the best protection we can give back to them. Let's hold our greatest respect to those drug enforcement police officers all around the world, even those who remain incognito. You are real superheroes. May there be no drugs in the world, and everyone be safe. Well, thanks for watching. That's all the content of this video today. If you got more details that I didn't mention or any mistakes in this video, please leave your comments below. It's not easy for newcomers to create. I mean, if you like this video, please hit that subscribe button. It's one small gesture for you, but a great motivation for me to move forward. I'll see you next time. Peace.